With every character that we write, like we always want it to feel as if the characters could lead their own drama film. Like take the horror elements out. You can still track this character's arc. You can still care for this character. They feel like a real person. Like they can pick their own outfits and they can change lines if they want to, and then just whatever they can do to give it like an authentic performance.
And then we rip them apart.
Welcome to Say More, a podcast where we talk with your favorite artists from film and TV and the internet about their careers, their latest projects, and their online obsessions.
This week on Mashable, we have our weekly new to streaming column, which brings you the highlights and lowlights of new shows and movies available on Hulu, Netflix, HBO Max, and more.
Plus, we have reviews of Karate Kid Legends, Wes Anderson's new movie, The Phoenician Scheme, and Bring Her Back, the new movie from Danny and Michael Philippou, who are the brothers that gave us Talk to Me. And that's who we're talking to this week in depth about their new film. Bring Her Back is a movie about a teenage boy and his little sister who are taken in by a foster mom played by Sally Hawkins. And while she is initially very warm and caring, there's something wrong in this house. And the more the teen boy becomes aware of that, the scarier and more upsetting this movie gets.
Enough build up. Let's get into the interview with Michael and Danny Philippou.
So excited to have you guys here.
Excited to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So we want to talk a little bit about how you guys went from being like YouTube stars to doing Talk to Me and now Bring Her Back. For me, there's such an interesting connective tissue between like the earliest stuff you guys did was like WWE style backyard wrestling videos.
Yeah.
So tell me about like how did that get you into filmmaking?
I think we
grew up with a big,
we grew up with a big group of kids around the same age, and we would do two things: backyard wrestle and beat out of each other, and make home movies. And we made our own TV shows and movies and stuff.
Mark always says that it has never been on TV. It was never anywhere. It was like
It's still a TV. It's still a TV show. It's played on our TV. But yeah. So we created these like whole things, and the goal was never to become. We were never interested in YouTube. We kind of just fell into it. We were making stuff, and then Danny posted some fake fail videos.
Which is like pretending things went wrong. So like we did like a spin on the Harlem Shake, and there was like a bomb that went off. Apparently it was all CGI. Or like there's a dare where I have to stick a knife in the toaster and the toaster blows up. And it was just all like, what was cool about the online videos was just short, quick videos and just like honing our craft and learning how to do practical effects or visual effects or building a set for the first time.
It kind of felt like in Australia, there's this path you have to take. You have to do apply for this to get this little bit of funding to apply for that, and it kind of feels like it's who you know, and you're going to create these relationships. And we would always submit stuff and get turned down. And I was working on film sets at the time, just volunteering, trying to be around film crews because I was just so amazed that movies were being made.
It's like it's so crazy. It's a real job.
Yeah, it's an actual job. And then, but we're getting kind of rejected for all these funding things. With the YouTube, when we got this kind of audience, we were able to kind of carve our own path and create our own following. And it felt like we could sidestep that way. So the YouTube stuff we just kind of fell into. It was so fun, rewarding. And it was always, we were able to get a lot of those smaller ideas out of our heads and onto the screen with the YouTube stuff. And it's just crazy and fun and quick. But then the film stuff was where we always wanted to be, and it was slowly building ourselves up to taking the leap into finally getting the courage to make a movie.
Sure. Well, watching over some of your videos, like I know Harry Potter versus Star Wars was a big one for you guys, and watching it, it's really incredible, not just that you guys figured out a way to make special effects that look so dynamic in this medium, but also the clear appreciation for these properties while playing with them.
Well, yeah, that was just because our friend Remy was sleeping over. And we watched a Star Wars film, and then we watched a Harry Potter film, and then just naturally the argument, arrived. And so that was just, we just shot it the next morning. Well, let's make a video on this, and then so we just started.
Yeah, it was one of those. That was the first video that went really viral on our YouTube channel, and we gained like 100,000 subscribers in one night. But we were a big fan of pop culture, all those things that we love. Doing spins on them is always fun.
And what's so exciting to me is like watching Talk to Me. I rewatched it this weekend. I have to tell you, it was a very hot day in New York this weekend, and I'm watching it at home just on TV as opposed to in the theater, and I got chills like in a very hot rewatching. Like very incredible. But what I love so much about that movie is the energy you guys capture about like being a teenager and feeling like this invincibility that allows them to make all these decisions that we as an audience are going like, God, no.
And it was always like, I think even Bring It Back as well sort of has it. There's naturally that energy on set with us, and then especially with moments like that montage sequence, we had 2 hours to shoot 50 shots. And it was like, this is impossible. At first, he's like, mathematically, it's impossible to get this. I'm like, no. Like, just throw the camera around, like, create the energy in the room, and we're just behind the couch yelling out direction, and all the actors are bouncing off of each other. And, like, yeah, naturally, like, having that energy on set. And because the schedule was so short, and it was just like, so everything was at a breakneck speed, and all the actors were down for it. It was awesome.
And, like, between having seen Now, Talk to Me, and Bring Her Back, there's such an incredible connection. And it's not just that both films deal with grief, it's also this respect that you guys give to teenagers that I think often in horror is abandoned in favor of making them kind of morality puppets that we get to just watch get ripped apart.
Yeah. Well, like, it's always with every character that we write, like, we always want it to feel as if the characters could lead their own drama film. Like take the horror elements out. You can still track this character's arc. You can still care for this character. They feel like a real person. And that also comes with everyone that we cast, for them to be able to integrate themselves into the role. Like, they can pick their own outfits and they can change lines if they want to, and then just whatever they can do to give it like an authentic performance.
And then we rip them apart.
I was to say, there's still that. There's still that.
Yeah.
But it's like watching it last night. I don't want to get into spoilers because people listening to this may not have seen the film yet. But there was a section where I was just like, felt so connected to these characters that I'm like, this can't happen. This can't happen. This can't happen.
Oh my God.
Whereas I think in slashers, where we're working a lot more with archetypes, as soon as you identify the archetype, you know that character is going to go down.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of like, in your head, I think, check out a little bit from caring about them.
Yeah.
That was the thing for us.
Killing a character is the biggest thing. Like, it just feels like you're killing a real person.
Well, yeah, and
I mean,
building,
guys, especially in your movies. Like,
Well, that's what, yeah. What I mean, like, I'd struggle to write a slasher because I'm like, wait, what is that? How's that going to affect this? So like killing a character is like not many people dive and talk to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the violence in that movie is so profound. We talked a little bit before off camera about like, it's part of the sound design. It's part of the fact that you guys love practical effects. Can you talk to me a little bit about, because obviously you do also embrace visual effects, but there's something about practical effects. Can you talk to me about why that matters to you and what in this movie you were like, we have to do this practically?
everything possible we wanted to do pull off practically. Because there's a realism to it. There's still something, even with the best VFX, it feels like there's an authenticity or a realness, a rawness that comes with doing it practically. And I have respect for movies that do that when they go and they try whatever the effect is. If you're going that extra mile, not to go, we'll deal with it in post. Let's actually figure out a way to do it in camera. There's this, always from a kid, I respected movies that did that.
Yeah, but also, so I also love a bit of VFX, but I always love it to blend those practical elements.
Yeah.
Like capture as much as you can on set and then use that VFX to help blend that stuff in or hide some of the rough edges.
Sure.
Yeah, so every challenge is like, how do we pull this off for real? Like how?
Right. And it was like, because the first time I saw Talk to Me was Sundance. And it was kind of before people had buzz about it yet. It was just one of the early things to see. And the way you guys shoot being possessed was so instantly upsetting because it relied so much on the physicality of the actor.
Yeah.
And similarly in Bring Her Back, especially with the young boy in the film, some of the things he does are so deeply upsetting.
Yeah. And they're always the funnest things to shoot. Like there's a scene with a table. We won't give it away.
We'll recreate it.
Yeah, let's just...
like behind the scenes.
Andy, just go ahead.
Let's go ahead and go for it, Michael.
We'll do all the other podcast studio over there.
Yeah. Let's destroy that set. It was all chocolate was used. And like chocolate was put in there and it was always like, the most horrific stuff is always the most fun to film. It's always the part where they have to really get into a headspace for a dialogue scene. That can be like, that's when the set needs to be a bit quieter and a bit sadder and like to like create that environment for the actors to be able to, live that, those feelings. But that overt horror stuff is always the funnest stuff to film.
Sure. I've heard that for the sound design, you guys got pretty personal with it and made some of your own sound effects.
Well, there's like a certain sound, for example, metal on teeth, that it's like you can't fake it. Like and that's when you're writing as well, tapping into the stuff that that makes you cringe or makes you be like, oh God, like what is it about that is making me uncomfortable? Yeah, let's put a lens on that or a microphone to it, and create that in a horror sense. Like all of the stuff, like thematically tying it into the film and making sure it makes sense for character, it makes sense for the theme and for the story, but also what can we do that we feel like hasn't been done and how to execute it in the most practical way possible.
We were talking before about how Harry Potter versus Star Wars was like a slumber party project, essentially.
Yeah.
And it seems like that energy and that sense of collaboration continues to influence how you work. I've heard you say that, like, Sally Hawkins, who's incredible in this movie.
Oh my gosh, we love her so much.
She also contributed to, like, set design. Can you talk a little bit about that, but also how more broadly you have this collaborative attitude toward your filmmaking?
It's finding people that are better than you at specific areas, and then like finding those people that are passionate. And I remember being on sets when we were just volunteering on sets. I could see the people that wanted to be there and they were passionate about it and loved what they were doing. And then the others that were there kind of just like a paycheck. And I remember even seeing them, like certain crew members, grips, unit, catering, that I just was like, oh, when we do a movie, I'm going to get these people. And then so finding those people, then having them all working together to create this vision is the best thing ever. And that's what Sally does. Sally is... she embodies this character so full in this way that's so in depth. Like every single line, every single moment she's thought about, and she would go shopping in character and get stuff to put in the set. She wanted that set to be lived in, to be her home as Laura. So she would go and buy stuff to like put in the drawer, even if it's not on camera, just putting them in drawers and stuff. So there's a familiar.
It's so awesome. And yeah, that's like the first thing we do when we've cast someone and they've come into pre-production, like sitting down with them, going through every single scene and like breaking it down. I'm like, this is what I'm sort of conveying here. This is what I'm drawing off of. Like, is there anything that you can sort of relate to in this? And what do you think the character's going through here? And just breaking down all those scenes and mapping the character and like allowing them, giving them the freedom. You can change the dialogue. You can do all that sort of stuff. Like whatever you can do to feel the most comfortable and make it personal.
You guys are so great at casting, because like Talk to Me was so wild. I had never seen any of those actors before. And then in this, I wasn't familiar with the children. I know some of them was their first time acting.
Yeah.
But then you have Sally Hawkins, who has done genre stuff. But like, Happy-Go-Lucky and Paddington.
Yeah.
Bring her back. And it's like, what's so alarming is she brings that same energy. Like there's a part where she's driving with the kids in the car and she has this face. And I'm like, yeah, that's Happy-Go-Lucky. And so to watch that turn is so alarming. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to bring her into horror?
Well, that was what was so exciting, because she's such a powerful character actor. Like she's so incredible, and every performance that she gives, she feels like she's somebody else. And I don't know, just that idea that she would say, yes, okay, we want a really powerful character actor. Sally was at the very top of our list. And like, there's no way that she's going to say yes. Like we just thought it was impossible. And when she's like, Sally loved the script, she really wants to meet you guys. We were just like, okay, she's going to be a nightmare. We're not going to be able to talk to her properly. Like the vibe won't be there. And then we met with her and she was the nicest, kindest, humblest person. And then there were some people as well that were like, I don't think your energies are going to match. Like you guys are very like up here. Like I feel like...
Yeah, I didn't think so either. She's like a 2-time Academy Award nominated.
And we're just losers.
Yeah, from Australia, they make YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And so that the fact that we just got on a lot like a house on fire.
Yeah.
It was,
yeah. You know, when you meet someone, you talk to them and feel like you've known them your whole lives. That's what it felt like with her.
I love that. And then something that excited me as a fan of Psycho-biddy movies is you've described this as Psycho-biddy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why that subgenre excites you?
There's something about that. And like with that, it's never the characters are inherently evil in the best Psycho-biddy films. It feels like the world has been evil to them. And it's turned them, and you can look at the character in all these different lenses, or like try and see it from their perspective and their point of view. And I love like whatever happened to Baby Jane, like these two powerful actors at the peak of their power. Like they've had these entire careers that have led up to these performances, I feel like. And then, yeah, I think Bette Davis is just incredible. And it just brings so many layers to these sort of characters. Same sort of Misery or whoever slew Andrew.
I'm so glad you said that, because watching this, I kept being like, oh my God, I'm getting so whoever slew Auntie Ruth.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, all those films I find so incredible. And there's something even like, if you look back on those films from the 60s, even just the audio quality, there's something about the way that those films sound and the way that they feel. It just feels comforting to watch. I don't know.
There's also just a lot of fluid in this movie. I'm kind of curious for you guys, when you're like, is there ever a point where you're like, that's too gross?
Oh, well, it's always like you do find it in the script. You like there's things that you sort of like try and, level out in the script and feel balanced. And also it's in the editing process as well. We have an amazing producer named Samantha Jennings. We have an awesome editing team as well.
I think our line's naturally maybe a bit further than not.
But yeah, you want to help balance it. But you also want to push the envelope a little bit. Like I don't mind treading over the line here and there for those sort of scenes. Like it is a horror film after all. But yeah, like you don't want it to feel like blood for the blood's sake. I always make sure it's rooted in character.
I mean, it also feels like you talked about the idea of making people feel uncomfortable with the sound design and kind of getting under your skin that way.
Yeah.
And what I thought was so impressive in the film is, like, personally, when I experience grief, it's like when that person is gone, the world doesn't make sense anymore. And I like the way your film is playing with these characters' sense of reality, where they have to kind of question, like, this can't be happening. That doesn't make sense. And it's like tying into the grief, but not directly about the grief. Can you talk about how your own experiences and your own grief was making the film cathartic? Was it difficult?
Well, it was like right at the start of pre-production, we'd lost a very close family friend. And because we were on set at that moment and we were making the movie, there was nowhere to put that or process that. And there were times on set where it was such a small set and like we're on location. There was nowhere, like there was times where I just break down crying, but I had nowhere to go to process it. And then the film became the place to deal with that. And then scenes that were written to be scary, like turned sad naturally. And there was just this moment in the pool shed at the end of the movie with Sally in the thing, and then Mike was crying, directing her, I'm crying, Sally is crying, cinematographer's crying. I don't know. It felt like it's an expressive. It's like this art form is expressive in the most pure way. So I don't know. It just felt like, it felt cathartic making the film.
Sure. Was there a scene that like kind of you rediscovered in making it? Like what it was on the page felt different when it was on the set?
Oh my God, so many scenes, right? Because even like the way that Laura was written was so different to like, we always pictured her being bigger than the kids and more powerful than the kids. And then naturally when Sally Hawkins was cast, that just like that dynamic was different as well. So many different things. Like you sort of adapt to the world around you. Like everything changes every time you make a decision, even if it's down to the color of a wall, or it's like, this location is different how you imagine it, but it's still got the essence of what you were picturing. So much of it feels different. It's never a one-on-one exactly as you pictured it as you write it.
Well, you guys are working on other things already. Like at worst, Talk to Me 2 is going to happen.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I've written 2 versions. My co-writer Bill Hinsman. I've written 2 different versions of Talk to Me 2 that are focusing on different sets of characters. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know if I even want it to be next. Like, I want to step away from it enough that I can come at it with a really fresh perspective and not
Favorite chooser.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while already.
But I mean, like, here's the thing. I think it's totally about, like, I appreciate that you want to protect what you created and you want to take your time. I know you guys worked on the set of The Babadook, and very famously, Jennifer Kent was like, we're not doing a sequel.
Yeah. And it feels like there's certain films that lend themselves to sequels and others that don't. So, like, Bring Her Back feels pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like there'd be any sequels or anything to that. But Talk to Me, for some reason, as soon as I'd finished writing with Hinsman, the same as my co-writer, we just couldn't stop writing after that. It's like, what happens after this? Where does the hand go, like, before this? And then we're writing out the mythology Bible and we're, like, tracking who had the hand when, like where it got passed down to. And then naturally, like, along that linear or, like, along that, whoever got handed it down, there was a story here and a story there. We're like, let's follow it up for a little bit. And I don't know, it's just like, it feels like a whole world, like the whole universe. So I'm so
It's a
excited.
rabbit hole.
It's a rabbit hole.
Well, because like in this film, there's definitely a lore. And what I liked about it is instead of having somebody sit down and go, well, the thing about, and like just giving us an exposition up, it's like we're getting snippets of it. And I feel like we get enough that like I was able to follow what was happening, but it also felt like you guys knew much more than is like necessarily on screen.
I'm so glad that you like that sort of thing. I think that does annoy some people or piss them off. But I always like when you're figuring things out or when you're connecting the dots. And I love coming in with a character and being in their point of view, because the first half of this ritual has happened already. This isn't like the lead up to this thing. Like, this is in the middle of happening already. And so I like that the audience has dropped in on that as well. And like the lore's there, the history's there, it's lived in, and there's little hints at things as well.
There's hints that aren't in an overt way. So it's through different things that, for those that are real diehard about figuring it out, they're there, but in a different way.
Sure. This is going to sound like a really out there comparison, but for me, it was like Steven Universe, where I started watching that show and I kept waiting for the episode where they would sit down and explain to me the world. And then I was like, oh, we're not doing that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like so much horror and stuff. Like if you look at The Shining as well, like they don't explain what's happening there. And there's this picture of Jack Torrance on the wall. And you're like, how does that connect to this? And if you read the script, those hints are in there. And the answers are there, but they remove it all. And it's so much stronger when it's there. The world's lived in and people can like connect the dots.
Yeah, I think also especially with horror, because there's something about not putting all the pieces together and not necessarily giving us that catharsis that allows us to be like, well, that's closed up and walked away. I think that was what I thought was so powerful about the way you guys make this film, is that it addresses these big issues and these big feelings, but it doesn't necessarily give us an out to be like, but it's all going to be okay.
Yeah, in both films, it feels like it's not all going to be okay.
Yeah, we want to do a happy ending for once.
Yeah, you never know that. I mean, there's a little bit of happiness.
Yeah. No, well, here's the thing. You both described the film as grim ahead of showing it last night in New York. And I don't disagree, but I would say for like a Psycho-biddy, it's actually surprisingly kind of hopeful.
Yeah. And it always depends on like how you're viewing things or how you're perceiving it. I mean, yeah, there is sort of a happy ending there. In a twisted way.
Like, I'm not going to say 100%. I feel like this is going to be one of those things where
it's pretty mishable.
Yeah. Like, someone's going to come up to me afterwards and be like, a happy ending. What is wrong with you? And be like, look, I said within context.
Yeah, within context, there is.
It is in a way. For the character, it is in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty grim as well. But, all about how you perceive it.
Right. I think that when you're dealing with grief, because I will say personally, look, when I am personally dealing with grief, I do look for movies and music that is going to let me like tap into that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this hit me so hard, was that I was just like, okay, like this, I get this feeling of just, I'm so upset and I'm so angry and I don't know what to do with it. And you see these characters trying to figure that out in a way that is brutal and tough to deal with. And like auditory wise, like, oh goodness, you guys had me. Like, I didn't really at one point have my notebook, and I'm not covering my face, but I'm covering my mouth. So like, you are gonna scream, and it's gonna be distracting.
Bigger shout out to our sound team, like Emma Boarding-Young and our mixer Pete Smith and our composer Cornell. Like, all of these people add so much to the film. Like, we love the way
it's so cool when you finish the edit, you lock the edit, and then seeing those other elements come into it.
Yeah.
Even with color and VFX and when that all starts coming together, that's when the movie really starts
to feel like a movie.
Yeah, feel like a proper film.
I have to say, I really loved Talk to Me, and I thought the energy of Talk to Me was so house party energy.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting about this is you still are focusing on like a teenage hero. You are still focusing on adolescence and these big feelings, but the tone is very different. And I think I want to say more mature, but I don't want to say that in a way that takes away from what Talk to Me did. But it feels like a progression in understanding grief.
Yeah, and
that was the challenge for us, was to make commit to a different kind of energy. Because and our instincts from YouTube are the quick look, bang, 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 and that kind of fast, rapid movement.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where, the movies that we respect are the ones that
respect. What's we real respect?
I don't respect you.
Oh, that's
but like those movies that we enjoy, it was a challenge for us to make a different kind of horror film.
Yeah, we really slow burn. Like that was we really wanted
a
to
snowball, spiral out of control.
Yeah, character study. Just to have a different tone to talk to me, and
it was terrifying because even when you're editing, you're instinctively let's like make it boom, 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 but it made the punches land harder, I feel, by having that kind of like being with the characters more, and then it felt like those moments just hit harder.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that kind of works against the impulse of like YouTube and making things online, where it's like it needs to be quick.
Yeah.
Like, it's very interesting to see you play out those things, because I think you understand audience expectation in watching on your phone versus watching in a theater.
Yeah.
But that must be terrifying to make that leap yourself.
Because even like with the opening shot was initially this really elaborate 3-minute shot. Like at the beginning of Talk to Me, there was this big opening sequence and all this death and carnage was happening. And in the moment, and as a scene as itself, it's so like, oh, this is perfect. This is so amazing. But when you put it in front of the first half of Bring It Back, which is like, it's sort of like, it's building to those moments. It felt like it overshadowed that. So that's another part of the editing process where you have to sort of control the tone and control like how the film was going to build.
It's so crazy how much one shot or one moment or one scene can change everything.
Yeah.
So that constantly watching it and revising it and ironing things out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting puzzle. It's so complicated. But once it's and because anything can change everything, and you don't realize what moving this does to something down there. So that was always a constant thing, trying to juggle that.
Well, is there anything, because you guys have talked about your love of pop culture, but you've been making these very original films, which is interesting because like watching them as a big horror fan, I can place references, but nothing feels like a nod. It just feels like, because I'm deep in it. I'm like, I get what you're doing. I see that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious for you, are there any big like projects or franchises that you'd like to be a part of, whether that's par or not?
We were attached to Street Fighter at one point.
Yeah, I remember.
But our schedules, it wasn't lining up, and it was like we had to pick between them. Like that's one that I was like, oh, I would have loved to do that. I felt like it was a natural.
That was so much fun. Like we were, creating something I think really cool and special. But it was just conflict of schedules. But yeah, it feels like
it takes so much time. And it's like you're like, oh, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that, and then when it starts happening, you're like, oh wait.
Well, it's 2 years. It's at least 2 years.
Minimum, yeah.
Yeah, minimum. So it's one of those things that, we'd love to get the opportunity to do it, but this one's felt right because, this is an original idea that's in our heads and it won't get out of our heads until we make it.
Yeah.
So it's got to get made.
Is there anything you want to put out to the ether you want to manifest that you'd like to be a part of?
I mean, I'm so excited to see if I could write another original film. Like, there's something about the original stuff where it's like, instead of like doing a Freddy Krueger movie, like the challenge of making your own Freddy Krueger, like that is so stimulating or exciting. And like, probably never achieve it, but like the idea of aiming for that, is
and then we're not messing up someone else's franchise.
Yeah, that's the scariest thing about doing a franchise is like doing something that people end up hating. Like, oh, they really screwed up that franchise. Like, screw them. Like,
at least if we screw it up, it's our own movie.
Yeah. That's also, there's a fear to that as well. Like, I don't want to let people down.
I really appreciate, and I think that this is part of what works so well for your films, is that you guys do have, even as you're making these films, they're very dark. There's a real vulnerability, I think, not just in your films, but also in how you express yourselves in like an interview.
Well, yeah, it's always like, the film is the way to exercise it and like to talk about things and like look at things.
But we always feel out of place as directors. Like say A24 was having a party and there was all these amazing directors and actors there, and we're sitting there
like we're doing
fucking belong. What are we doing here?
I feel like a fraud.
Yeah, fraud, outsider, like sneaking into this party.
And every time they bring a director to a screening, I want to go up to and apologize to them afterwards. I'm like, I'm so sorry we wasted your time. I don't know. I just feel like
we're wannabe filmmakers.
Yeah, we're wannabe filmmakers.
Like.
Yeah.
Respectfully, as a film critic, I disagree. You guys absolutely belong in those rooms. We're super happy to have you here today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you guys so much for coming and talking about this movie that I genuinely loved. I'm very excited to see it again.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for talking.
Thanks for having us.
These guys are so much fun to talk to. They're so humble, and just the joy that they have of just making things and of like being filmmakers is so infectious.
Yeah, I was also really impressed because their films, while terrifying, have a very earnest emotional core, and in talking with them, that was what was most clear. They are guys who wear their hearts on their sleeve. It might be a very bloody heart, but it's there, and I appreciate that.
A delightfully bloody heart. Next week on Mashable Say More, we've got a lot of fun coming your way. For Karate Kid legends, Ben Wang, Jackie Chan, Ralph Macchio, they came by the Mashable Studios to play Choose Your Squad, where they have access to the entire Karate Kid canon. Fighters, senseis, and they're basically drafting a whole karate tournament squad. And they're going head to head, and you, the viewers, will have the opportunity to cast your vote for whose squad you think will dominate in the karate tournament. It's going to be an epic battle you won't want to miss.
And we have our full interview with the one and only Bob, the drag queen. Previously on Mashable, we released a clip of our interview with Bob where he talked about his new historical fiction novel, Harriet Tubman, live in concert. In the full interview, we go deeper into the book, but we also get into traitors, dungeons, and drag queens, and how online fandoms of reality shows compare. We're talking Housewives versus Drag Race fans, people.
And between Bob the Drag Queen and the Karate Kid cast, this episode is going to be pure, untethered joy.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Bob coming by was a very rock star moment. Like, sometimes you can be intimidated to meet somebody and then they show up and you were like, oh wow, you're even cooler than I could have imagined. And that was very much the experience. So we can't wait for you to be a part of that.
This has been Mashable Say More. You can subscribe to us anywhere you find your podcast. You can watch us on YouTube at Mashable. You can also find us on socials, on TikTok and Instagram at Mashable. And if you have any thoughts about what you've heard here on the podcast or anyone you want to see us interview on the podcast, let us know. But until then, we will see you next week on the Say More couch. See you then.